Good morning, everyone. My name is John Marie Mercado, UPIE Batch 1980, and current board member of the UP Industrial Engineering Alumni Association, or UPIEAA. Today, with me today is my fellow board member, Maan de Rosario, UPIE Batch 1979, and Jason Fernandez from the UP Department of IE and Operations Research, Batch 2019. Together, we will be your hosts and moderators for today. Welcome to the third of our Imagineering webinars for 2021. This is a series of webinars featuring distinguished UPI alumni talking about various topics that are relevant in today's times. Today, we will have the second of three webinars designed to showcase the four different tracks of the IE program, namely production systems, human factors, operations research, and information systems. We welcome all the students and some alumni who can be better informed of the opportunities they can pursue after graduation. This event is made possible by the UP Department of Industrial Engineering and Operations Research with support from the UPIEAA. This event celebrates 110 years of the UP College of Engineering and is a precursor to the Golden Jubilee celebration of the UP Department of IE and OR. This is also being presented with the support of the UPIE Club and the UP SIEM, or Circle of Industrial Engineering Majors. During the course of the webinar, all microphones will be muted. We encourage you to keep your videos on so our speakers may see you. We encourage you also to post any questions you may have in the chat box in Zoom. We will endeavor to answer all questions in the open forum after the main talk. We are recording this webinar. And finally, we will be conducting a quick poll to get your feedback on this webinar after the open forum. So let's get started. To start our webinar, please welcome the chairman of the UP Department of Industrial Engineering and Operations Research, Professor Eric Laguno, to give the welcome remarks and an overview of the department. Eric?
Okay, thank you very much, John. Magandang araw po sa ating lahat on behalf of the Department of Industrial Engineering and Operations Research. I warmly welcome everyone to the day 2 of our webinar series. Okay, as mentioned, this webinar series is actually a part of the celebration of the college 110th anniversary. And in a way, this also kicks off our activities related to our celebration of the 50th anniversary of the department come July 31 this year. So I was checking our list of graduates the other day, and I found out we have already graduated a total of close to 3,500 graduates, both at the undergraduate and at the graduate level. And it's really quite an achievement in the department 50-year experience. Now, with regards to our theme, keeping track, finding direction, I'm actually reminded of this Latin phrase, quo vadis, which is translated as where are you going, or in some translations, it's where are you marching? Okay, for some of the senior students that we have here, you'll be marching, virtually marching in your graduation a few months from now. Of course, the question is, where to? Okay, well, graduating or not, this webinar will actually further orient students, both at the undergraduate and the graduate level, on possible career options. I also checked, by the way, from our database of alumni, the UPIEAA and the department have been doing some updating of our database. And I checked the other day, where are our graduates, where are they mostly working, which particular area, okay? Just to let you know, I found a lot of our graduates doing work in the production systems area. And for some reason, the human factors track is a road less traveled. And I'm sure today our speakers will enlighten us on this one. I'd like, of course, to thank UPIE AA for always supporting the endeavors of the department for co-presenting this webinar series, as well as our student organizations, the UPI Club, and the UP Circle of Industrial Engineering majors. Of course, thanks as well to our webinar team. No? So for this morning, let us all relax, enjoy, and learn, okay, from the vast experience and from the wealth of experience of our distinguished alumni speakers. And thank you, of course, for taking time and sharing us, no, your wonderful experience in your career. So magandang umaga po sa ating lahat.
Maraming salamat, Eric. Kovadis. I really like that. Today, we're excited to present to you some of our outstanding alumni. Today, we'll cover production systems and the human factors tracks. So to introduce our first speaker, please welcome Assistant Professor Regine Tejada. Reg?
Poch Agnir is the Vice President for Integrated Supply Chain at Universal Robina Corporation. Prior to this, he was the General Manager for the Visayas and Mindanao for Republic Cement Corporation. He spent a couple of years in Singapore as Director for Supply Chain, Asia Pacific for Kerry Ingredients. He started his career with Procter and Gamble, taking on various roles and postings in Japan, China, and Singapore over close to 25 years. He is also a graduate of UPIE in 1987. Let us all welcome Mr. Poch Agnir.
First of all, let me say thank you to the two gentlemen who invited me, Dr. Eric Llaguno, Chairman of the Department of Industrial Engineering and Operations Research, and Mr. Ricky Peña, President of the UPIEAA. Happy to be given this opportunity to talk to you about potential career opportunities in different fields of IE, and in this case, production systems. Like you, I had my own apprehensions about what was out there for me in the professional world. Our IE discipline has prepared us well, prepared you very well. Here you can see how our college describes the IE program, right? It already points out good, broad range of discipline that is out there for you. And today I circled the piece that I've been asked to talk about, production systems. Then when you look at something like the Commission on Higher Education memoranda, it talks about some of the potential career takeoff points for IE. So it's also there if you look at this this memorandum. But these are just some of the possible takeoff points. In reality, there is so much more for you out there. So much. The IE discipline has prepared you for an abundant landscape of possible career takeoff points. You can see there in the graphic on the bottom right, the things you can do with the IE discipline that has been given to you. So one of them obviously is the production system career path. I'll share some examples of how the IE discipline adds value, or how you as an IE practitioner can add value in a production system career path. I myself started in a manufacturing production system career path. A few months after my graduation from UP, I was blessed to be offered a job at Procter and Gamble. Of course, with a lot of prayers from my mother, no doubt. Excited, apprehensive, but quickly evident upon my entry to P&G that the UPIE program prepared me very well for the manufacturing challenges that was there, that I would face, that I would be asked to help with. So my message to you this morning is one, your IE discipline remains very relevant, and you can certainly be successful out there. Two, I'll share some examples of where the IE discipline in a production system environment where you can be very effective and add a lot of value. And three, I will share some words of advice on how to manage your own career progression. Okay. So COVID, uh, tough market outlook, you're about to graduate. So let me show you this graph. This shows the Philippines year-on-year GDP growth. So you see here years of positive GDP growth, followed by 2 miserable years of significant negative growth. 2 miserable years where GDP contracted, 2 miserable years where the market suffered, jobs suffered, 2 miserable years with people suffering. Sounds very familiar, right? Something you can see right now, something you can feel right now. Well, I want to tell you that guess what? This is not a graph from 2021. This is not today's GDP. This was in the latter half of the 1980s. Same picture, massive drop in Philippines GDP, jobs lost, poor market outlook, people suffering. So you might say, wow, 1980s, no? That was the time when your parents were still young and dancing and creating their own version of TikTok, no? So certainly a long time ago. And there's a picture there of what your parents might have looked like then. No? But the point I wanted to make here is that with this chart showing a GDP contraction back then, this was while I and Ricky, we were IE students like you. And just as you, we stood apprehensive of this bleak market outlook. How's the job market going to be once we graduate? So you too right now are probably living through this, your own version of this 2 years of poor economic performance, gloomy market outlook. What I found out was that because my beloved professors had taught me well in the College of Engineering and in the IE discipline. So, okay, you might not find your professors beloved right now, but believe me, they are beloved people. Because of them, I had the necessary ability to think, to analyze the whole system, and make recommendations that directly benefited the business objectives of the company. So understand this. I want you to understand this. We will recover, and you will play a major role in that recovery. You will rebuild this nation. So just as the negative happened in the 80s and we bounced back, this negative is here and we will bounce back. All makaka-recover. Okay, so knowing that, hopefully that gives you some positive outlook. When you do start working, how can you be successful? No, you need to frame your mind now. How can you be valuable to the companies that you work with? And to do that, you will need to understand what is their compelling business need. For me, it happened early on. No? Early on, I clearly saw strong examples that sales growth and profit growth was very important to the company. My very first job was in P&G in manufacturing. It was a role in the old P&G plant in Tondo, Manila. Not sure if people are aware of Tondo, Manila, but it wasn't an easy start for me. And you will have your own initial challenges to contend with once you start working. one of my initial challenges was just getting to the Tondo plant every morning, every day before 7 a.m. I was there. I needed to be there, and it was an area of Tondo that tended to flood every morning when both rains were happening and it was high tide. Um, and given I started working during the rainy season in August, and given the fact that high tide, guess what, happens every day, it meant that it flooded near and around the plant every morning. And so that was a challenge for me. I didn't have a personal car. So I rode jeepneys to work. I rode 5 jeepneys, in fact. Tandang Sora to Commonwealth, Commonwealth to España, España, Tayuman, Tayuman to Pritil, and Pritil finally to Velasquez Street, Tondo, and get there by 7 a.m., before 7 a.m. Anyway, I saw that the remarkable work ethic of people, and so I myself persevered. No issue with that. The good part is that less than 2 weeks later came my first paycheck. You know? So I was very excited to collect my money. In UP, I was subsisting on 25 pesos per day. And then here now, I was going to get my first paycheck from PNG. So I was very excited. And in those days, your salary is given physically at the plant in bills and coins. It's not transferred to your account like it is these days. No? So to get my money, I had to go to the plant. And so I was very excited that morning to go to the plant and collect my paycheck. But that morning, that same morning, there was a coup d'etat. It had erupted, and there was a coup d'etat, and there was gunfire. There was gunfire in the streets. There was tanks on the road. There's planes and helicopters up in the air. My parents were worried for me to go out, no. But I wanted to get my paycheck, right? So I went anyway. It was easy to find the Jeep because not so many people were out, but I went anyway to the plant, and actually I was feeling pretty good about myself now. Uy, sikat, no, it's a coup d'etat, but here I am still going to show up at the plant, no, show them what kind of a dedicated worker I am. Although my ulterior motive was just to get my paycheck, right? Well, guess what? When I got to the plant, everybody was in the plant. Everybody was there. The lines were running. So hindi pala ako sikat, no? I wasn't unique. So I learned a couple of things there. Well, one, nobody is absent on payday. That's for sure. But two, I saw how people in the company wanted to protect the business, wanted to keep the production lines running. The bosses and the people in the lines who knew the value of these jobs, to their as their livelihood, as their source of how to feed their families. I saw how important it was to protect the business. So I saw how important it was for the business to continue being able to sell, being able to make profits, to keep the company alive. So how important that was that day. So I went to the plant to get my first paycheck, but I left with much more. I left with a very valuable lesson. So it was good. I decided to show up that day on a coup d'etat. Specifically, some of the company's key business needs were higher sales and higher profits. No, companies need to survive. Companies need to grow. Companies need to reinvest the money back into the company to fuel more growth. So to reinvest back into the company to fuel growth, companies need continued growth in sales and continued growth in profits. That was true then when I was starting, and it's true now for you also. The compelling business needs remain sales growth and profit growth. And of course, to do it in ways that are sustainable and do it in ways that keep our people safe. So you recall what industrial engineering is all about. It is an engineering profession that helps achieve business goals by designing, improving, and implementing integrated systems and processes of man, machine, money, materials, information. Um, your IE education is providing you a sound foundation in science and engineering in preparation for a career in achieving these compelling business needs. So we are right there, able to contribute to these compelling business needs. How can you be relevant? Of course, there's many different ways. I'm just focused on the production systems this morning. And in fact, I'll zoom it in even more just to be more crystal clear on some of these examples, how to be relevant and of value. So you, as the IE practitioner, need to align yourself to the compelling business need. Okay, if you see the graphic on the left side, this shows the cascading of business objectives from a total company to a division, a department, maybe the specific function you're in, the specific manufacturing plant you're in, and the specific assignment that you're in. But you need to make sure that your KPIs, your goals, are directly line of sight to the company goals, and that you're directly contributing to sales growth and profit growth. So keep that in mind. And then the graphic on the right is a very simple equation: profit equals revenue minus cost. So you need to be adding value either in ways that are improving or enabling higher cost, or you should be improving reduction of costs to generate profit growth, right? Very clear, no? So I'll go ahead and show some examples of those, no, where in the production systems or how in the production systems you can contribute to higher sales, and also how you can contribute to lower costs. So the first example of enabling higher sales in production systems is working on a reliable product supply. So OEE, overall equipment effectiveness. I hope you've seen this equation, no? Not sure, is it IE 136, 151? I don't remember, no, but OEE is calculated as availability times performance times quality. No? Availability is the number of hours you're actually running divided by the number of hours that is planned to run, and performance is the throughput or speed that you are running divided by the rated speed or throughput of that equipment, and then quality, good quality over total quality, equals the overall equipment effectiveness. And we've been trained a lot as IE practitioners in these, no. So the first one, availability losses. So availability means, let's say you're planned to run 22 hours in a day, but you're only running 20. No, so you're losing 2 hours there. And so where do you find it? Typically, it's in terms of operational losses, activities which means activities that are taking longer than they should. Changeovers that need to be done in 1 hour are taking 2 hours. You know, startups, maybe on a Monday morning coming from a weekend shutdown, startups are taking longer. They're not ready to run. They're not passing the quality parameters to be able to start up, you know, or changeovers. So you do some root causing there. You know, what is causing these operational losses, and you look for better methods to start up early, to change over faster, to clean out faster. You know, better methods. So IE 32, tama ba? And And then equipment downtime, you do the root causing. You do the loss map of the line. You look for you identify the loss points and what are the reasons, why. What's that? IE 33, 36? Parang ganon, no? And so again, you are prepared very well for this kind of exercise and adding value. Performance losses, it's the same formula. The second factor there is performance losses. So these are the ones where your process throughput is slower than standard, or your your packing rate is slower than the rated speed. Could be because of equipment degradation. It could be because you are the equipments are not running at the center lines, no. And so again, root causing, loss mapping, loss identification, and once you identify the sources of loss, you don't have to solve all of these problems. You drive loss identification, and then you pull in the experts that are needed to drive out those losses. Sometimes it's from engineering, sometimes it's people capabilities, whatever those three, or quality of materials coming in, whatever those issues are, you can now pull in the resources from the company that are needed. But the important thing is you're driving it, you've identified the sources of loss. Now you're leading the elimination of those losses. And then quality losses is the third factor there for OEE. And so it could be any of these as you go through your root causing. The input materials are off quality to begin with. Equipment's not at center lines, either because standards are wrong or because the operators are not qualified properly. There could be equipment degradation. There could be sources of contamination affecting the quality, and so you go through this why process to figure out where the losses are, and then you know you're well trained to do this, and you can certainly lead this kind of activity. The other way of that we as IE practitioners have been trained in terms of reliable product supply is the organization capability building programs. I know there's probably a different speaker for that topic, but we're well trained for these also. IE prepares us well for this, organization design, people systems, people productivity. There's different schools of thought out there: lean manufacturing, Toyota's TPM. The last one on the right is P&G's version, TPM with 8 pillars, P&G's version with 10 pillars. No, so and again, I find IE discipline has prepared us well to be effective in driving these org designs and people systems. So that's another way that you can contribute to reliable product supply. Another way to contribute to higher sales is enabled by better planning. Better planning is better anticipation of demand, better preparation of supply, having the right SKUs at the right place, the right time, the right quantity. We study that in IE, no? What is that? IE 151, IE 144 maybe for forecasting systems using some statistical tools. But I find my experience, the best planning managers I've had were those that were IE graduates. They just had a better capture of everything that can impact demand and what you should be planning for. They just worry so much about the whole system of how supply can be impacted, and so better planning is another way you can add value to higher sales. I won't go through these graphics here because probably you've gone through them also in your IE classes. No, But the important thing to remember is that this whole thing is, you're not in a silo just planning the production of your manufacturing plant, but again, your line of sight to the business goals, where the company wants to grow and how, and then your planning is aligned to that. Then another way that your IE discipline can drive higher sales is optimization of the supply network. No, so optimization, such a sweet word to us, right? This is that eternal question, no? To support the business growth, sales growth, good profits, what is my supply system supposed to be? What is the most effective way? What's the optimized way? How many production plants should I have? How many? Where should I locate them? How big? What are the capacities there? When should they be installed? And then distribution center, same, no? How many? Where? How big? Um, and then the optimization itself, to enable higher sales and lower costs. One, it needs to be a robust and reliable network. Two, it needs to have speed and agility. And three, it needs to be cost efficient. And those three vectors are not necessarily convergent. In fact, many times they're divergent. A low cost network typically could be slow and not quick to change. And then a network that is very agile and quick, no, like Grab, Padala, tends to be not cheap, no, and so on, no. So these three, you have to optimize it. Operation Research Dream, right? And we're prepared well to understand and define the problem, diba? Which is sometimes the most difficult thing, diba? You have to write down the linear programming equation. That's half the battles, no? So, but we're prepared well to understand these optimization situations, and then act on them properly. So here, by being a very good IE practitioner here, you can drive higher sales and be of value to the company. Another way of increasing sales is by robust change management, no? So in this case, it's an example is like project management for a new product launch or a new capacity line. Project management. What is this? IE 153. Um, and it you've learned some of the tools, but as you get into the company, you will of course you will be taught what project management tools are used, what project management processes and approval processes are used, but you're prepared well for this. The important thing to know again is when you're in a project and you're leading that project, align yourself quickly to the business goals and make sure your project will directly contribute to those business goals. Because ultimately, your project will need management choices or decisions on allocation of resources. No project has infinite resources of people to work on it, or capex to work on it, no, or time to work on it. So there will be decisions needed, and you need to drive your project. You have to align to the business goals so that you can sell properly what your project needs. And some of the project intent is there: products, new lines. You need to start up at high OEE. The performance need to be sustained, and you need to be at target cost, no, or lower. Going back to this equation here of profit equals revenue minus cost, I've just shared with you all different examples of the IE discipline adding value to higher sales, higher revenue. And then now I'll just quickly show some examples of how to decrease cost, or areas of these decreasing cost. So here I'm just pointing out that higher profit enabled by lower costs, right? Because we add value to our product proposition to the consumer, not by just increasing the selling price, right? But you have to do it by reducing cost. If you increase the price, um, your value proposition goes lower. And so if your demand is very elastic, then the demand for your product goes down. No, I think we all learned that in economics. No, I'm having recollections of Professor Monsod lecturing us. Marginal propensity to consume. You know, MPC equals DC over DY. You guys remember that? So again, we add value by decreasing the cost, and you can see the graphic on the right side, right? It's the same price, and so our sales volume should remain same, but now the profit significantly grows by driving costs down. And here are typically, as again, you will do your loss identification techniques, no, that you're well trained for. Where the loss is happening, do your loss map, why, all the different root causing tools that we have, and then you figure out the key root causes. Materials typically account for the majority of the product cost, you know, sometimes as high as 70-80% of the product cost, you know, materials itself, raw and packaging materials. So that's always a good start of if you're trying to reduce costs. You know. There's always a lot of gains there by focusing on materials. But the labor is also a source of cost savings. Sometimes too much labor is being used. Again, back to methods, you know, or absenteeism, get into people systems and things like that. Utilities. In the best companies, utilities, you almost forget about them because they just work brilliantly every day. No, there's always electricity, kind of like your house, no, but sometimes there's always electricity, there's always steam, there's always chilled water, no? But in a poor manufacturing environment, utilities can be a big source of your losses. The lines are running, but not well. Why? Then you find out eventually that the quality of the compressed air is not right. The stability of the steam is not right. So utilities could be one of your sources. Operating expenses, depreciation, freight and handling. So just some details related to that. Material cost. You look at material yield and scraps. Labor, if you improve OEE, your labor cost will improve, right? You get to run less hours, less overtime is probably needed. You don't have to run on holidays and Sundays just to catch up to your production plan. So you save on labor. Utilities, again, like I said, sometimes there's invisible losses there. You plot the energy map, the water map, whatever, and similar to loss points on a line, there could be you plot the loss points in utilities. Operating expenses, typically the IE practitioners tend to be very good budgeting in a production system. Somehow we were able to understand how the different elements in the production system work together and therefore impact cost. And we're very good at budgeting properly for repairs and maintenance, people, costs, things like that. Depreciation is also important because where you have impact on that is on new line capacity planning. It goes back to what I said about IE discipline being very good at planning for new capacity, you don't want excessive capacity early, because you'll be paying a high depreciation for capacity that's not needed. And so that's unwanted cost. It's cost that gives no value at all to your consumer. And so you need to eliminate those. Freight and handling, storage. This is the optimization of the supply network that I mentioned earlier. And the whole lean approach, no, eliminate costs that do not add value to your consumer. Not sure if that's IE 138. So I think I'll move on, no, to, so those are the good examples of why I believe the IE discipline has prepared you well to be effective. You'll do well. You will find your spot of where you can contribute, and you are prepared well. So just to my last point then, how to manage your own career. Some quick thoughts. First bullet point I put there is you have to deep dive and become the expert in whatever operation or function you're assigned. No matter how big, how small, whatever it is, you need to be interested in it, deep dive, and you're the expert. You need to come out of there recognized by your peers, your bosses, that you're the expert when it comes to that subject. So do not rush and try to get on and get promoted or get moved to some other part of the business because you want to be well-rounded. That will happen. But the first place that you're assigned, the second place that you're assigned, deep dive it, become the expert. And that will benefit you a lot as you progress. Second bullet point is get involved. Get involved in multidiscipline, multifunction projects. Step up, volunteer. And with your expertise, you will have confidence. No? You develop your expertise already from bullet point 1. When you step up and join these teams, you will have confidence that you will add value because you are an expert in what you represent in that team. So volunteer. You could even lead the project eventually, and then make sure you get it done. No, that's important. You get it done. And then third, and my last point, take care of your people. You're young, you come in, people will be older than you, old enough to be your father or mother. But learn early on. You're now a leader there. So you learn early on how to take care of your people, how to coach them, how to develop them, build them up, and then have them ready to replace you. Because how can you progress if there's nobody to replace you? So that's my last point. I wish you all the best. I know you'll do very well. And thank you very much for listening in.
Thank you, Poch. Your stories about your stint in PNG in Tondo reminds me of my first foray in corporate when I was a methods analyst for the SMC carton plant in Tondo also. And thank you for your tips on managing the career progression. Before we continue, I'd like to remind our participants, please post your questions in the chat box so we can accommodate them in the open forum later. All right, let's move on. To introduce our next speaker, please welcome Miss Andre Luis Malyare. Andre?
Hi everyone, good morning. Our next speaker's personal philosophy is that learning never stops. We don't know what we don't know. Until recently, Mr. Val Reyes was the Health, Safety, Environment, and Quality Director of the Light Rail Manila Corporation, currently in the 6th year of a 32-year concession agreement to operate, maintain, and expand the LRT-1 system. Mr. Val Reyes has a proven track record and over 30 years of experience in the fields of operations management, industrial engineering, PQM, and environmental health and safety in the semiconductor manufacturing, telecommunications, airline, and rail transport industries. He had extensive exposure to high volume manufacturing and operations in a complex, highly competitive environment, as well as direct participation in factory startups and product transfers in a multinational setting, even including an expatriate assignment in the People's Republic of China. He has 8 years of experience as a leadership and safety consultant in the oil and gas construction, mining plant construction, electronics, and solar panel manufacturing industries. He also has 2 years of experience teaching production management and engineering economy and financial analysis in engineering and business graduate schools. He is currently serving in the University of the Philippines Engineering Research and Development Foundation Incorporated, or UP-ERDFI, as a member of the Board of Trustees, focusing on bringing research to the market and society. Mr. Val Reyes graduated with a BSIE degree from UP in 1974, an MSIE in 1977, and an MBA in 1984. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome Mr. Val Reyes.
Thank you, Andre. Good morning, everyone. Gandang umaga sa inyo, and it's a privilege to be here before you to share something on human factors. So thank you, Professor Eric Jaguno, Mr. President Ricky Peña, and the UPIEAA for this opportunity. Before I start, I thought I'd say a couple of things. One is I wanted to tell you a story about a mother who had brought her son for a checkup with the family doctor. So they were having this post-examination conversation. And the doctor says, Mrs. R, I'm afraid I have some findings to share with you. Your son has the knack. And so the mother starts to tear up a bit and look worried. So doctor, is this curable? The doctor says, I'm afraid it's not. So the mother starts crying now. She says, is he going to be able to live a normal life? And the doctor says, it's a permanent condition, and I'm afraid it's not going to be normal. So the mother is now hysterical. So what kind of a life is he going to live? And the doctor pauses for a while and says, well, I'm afraid he's going to have to be an industrial engineer. Anyway, I can say that joke because I'm an IE, okay? And in many ways, it's not going to be a normal life, yeah, by the way. So we all have the knack in us. But the other thing I wanted to say is when Professor Eric wrote me a note asking me to speak on ergonomics, I said, hey, there are a lot of experts in the college who can give a better, talk than me, because, all I know about ergonomics is really what I learned on the job. I didn't study this a lot. I don't even remember, the course that I took in IE that talked about this. Perhaps it was even called a different name, maybe human factors. I'm not really sure which one was the precursor. But anyway, Professor Eric was saying, please accept this, and said, well, this is a great opportunity. So this is going to be a very practical sharing from my end. And let me start then on that note. Am I okay?
Yes, you are. Please proceed. Go ahead.
Thank you. So ergonomics, it's your choice. And I'll explain my title actually at the end of my talk. All right. So let's start with just getting aligned on ergonomics. So we're on the same page on definitions. So it is basically fitting the work to the worker. And it can also be, in a sense, fitting the use to the user. Okay. And that is for the purpose of reducing the risk of injury or discomfort. I'll talk a little bit about risk later on. Technically known, as I mentioned, as human factors engineering, and that's probably how it was known during my time. I'm not really sure. So the key word here when you talk of ergonomics is fit. You know, it's the fit between the people and what they do, the objects they use, and the environments in which they work. So those are what fit is all about. And because of this work, people get exposed, or because of the use of objects, people get exposed to different risk factors, which increases the risk of experiencing discomfort or even injury in the worst case. All right, I hope that just clarifies what I mean this. Now, let me give you my personal take on ergonomics. So it is not as well established or known as other IE disciplines, such as what Poch just discussed earlier. And this would be production management, operations research, methods improvement, time and motion studies, supply line planning. So these are very well known. Like its allied field of health and safety, ergonomics was viewed as a nice to have and a discretionary expense for years, while the rest of the disciplines developed and took root in industries. So just speaking plainly, ergonomics does not have the same glamour as the other fields of IE. Now in the Philippines, and I could be wrong here, but I would say it's only in the last 20 years that the practice emerged as a major IE discipline in industry. And a lot of these were spurred by multinational companies for the basic reason that ergonomics can be costly at the beginning. Okay. So that's what we call a hinge factor for introducing ergonomics. All right, so what are the ergonomic applications? I will cite three. The first is the design of man-machine systems, and this is also known as workplace ergonomics. And this is applicable to both office and operational work environments. And this is a very interesting field because it calls for creativity, it calls for science, and there's also art involved here in fitting people to the machine or the system. Now, the second category would be the design of consumer goods and service system. And examples here would be cars, appliances, and tools. When I was driving for the first time, the steering wheel of the car was just a round, wheel with the horn, in the middle. But now, when you look at the new cars, you've got just about everything there. The controls and the sound system, and these are all ergonomically designed. All right. And again, this is more for the consumer as opposed to a worker. So that in itself is another category. And again, there's a lot of room for creativity here. Appliances and tools, tools are ergonomically designed so that they minimize, the possibility of risk of injuring yourself in using them. Now, the third category would be the design of the work environment. Okay, so it may not necessarily be the equipment, but the surroundings, illumination, the noise, air, the air system, ventilation, even chemical exposure. That's part of designing your work environment, and sleep patterns. As would be required in for example, in a call center. People there work at odd hours, different hours, because their customers are located in a different time zone. All right, so those would be the three categories I would cite for ergonomics in terms of applications. Now, let me share some data. I wish I could give you Philippine data, but it's very difficult to get this sort of data in our local environment. But this gives you some context. About 6 years ago, 2015, in the US, ergonomic injuries accounted for 1/3 of days away from work cases in the US. What does this mean? Days away means that the person cannot do the regular job because of an injury attributed to an ergonomic exposure. Okay, 1/3. So that's huge. And that means even if the person is able to physically report for work, he or she cannot do the work because of that injury, and that means cost. Okay. Now the injuries were predominantly what you call musculoskeletal disorders, or MSDs for short. And examples of this would be carpal tunnel syndrome. I'll talk a little bit about this later. Tendinitis, inflammation of the tendons, trigger finger, muscle strains, and even low back injuries. All right, so these are what are called MSDs. The highest incident rates included various industries. So this was kind of spread out. So it wasn't really confined to a particular one. This included transportation, warehousing, the heavy lifting and movement, healthcare. Nurses and healthcare workers need to walk and stand for long hours, push beds, and even carry stuff. Entertainment and recreation. Okay, that's somewhat interesting as well. I guess people have to also stand long hours and perhaps assume different awkward positions. Agriculture, for obvious reasons, that's backbreaking. Construction, that's another one. That's a big area where ergonomic injuries are seen. And last but not least would be manufacturing. Right, a lot of potential risk there. Now, the OSHA statistics in the US reveal that the related workers' compensation expenses for MSDs, okay, I'm talking about only MSDs alone, it costs businesses $15 to $20 billion per year. Can you imagine that? I can't, honestly. So that's a lot of money. Okay, and that's just compensation. That means paying the worker for not doing the job while he or she is recovering. Okay, so parang sick leave pay yan. Now, what's more, the Institute of Medicine estimates that the total annual economic burden resulting from workplace MSDs, again, I'm just talking about MSDs, adds up to 45 to 54 billion per year. So these are costs like insurance, providing for healthcare, productivity loss. There's a whole lot of cost associated with this, not just the compensation to the worker. So this kind of data blows your mind because it may not be the same in the Philippines, the same magnitude, but you can see that the impact is huge. All right. Now let's look at the risk factors. I mentioned this earlier, and let's talk about the office, because this is probably where many of us will be exposed to, at least in the beginning. So these are the common factors. One is awkward posture, where you're not, your posture is not in a natural way that our bodies are used to, or being in a sustained posture. For example, having to stand, a full 7 or 8 hour day, because that's the nature of the job. So that's one risk factor. Another is repetition. Having to do the same thing for extended hours. Just like in construction, if you're a carpenter, you'd probably be hammering most of the time. We're using the lagare to cut wood. So these are repetitive, and these are actually sources of risk of injury. And then lastly would be contact stress, where there's pressure on a particular part of your body. It could be your wrist, your elbow, your feet, your neck. And all of these equate to discomfort. In the beginning, that's the initial sign, all right? But it can easily deteriorate and lead to what I mentioned is musculoskeletal disorder, or MSD. Okay? I'm going to use MSD. Mahirap i-pronounce yung musculoskeletal. Having said that, I'm sure many of you or most of you are computer user. So here are discomfort reports related to using the computer. So let's look at the first column. These are the different discomforts. And then the second column would be, what are the common causes? So if you're experiencing headache, okay, one of the common causes is your monitor height is not ideal, which is basically where your eye level is. So sometimes without our realizing it, our monitor is either higher than our eye level or lower. So that creates that can cause potential headache. Mid-back tension, okay? And this could be because of the extended reach to your keyboard or mouse. Masyadong malayo ka. You're not within the distance that allows your arms and your wrists to rest or to move naturally. Shoulder back tension, keyboard and mouse would be too high. Again, sometimes because of lack of knowledge, we think it's okay, and it doesn't really feel uncomfortable, especially in the beginning, but this can actually cause discomfort as you move forward, and as the longer you spend on that particular activity. Forearm, elbow, clawing of the scroll wheel. So it seems like, again, it seems harmless to be doing this on the scroll wheel. You're not using your mouse, but that could actually injure or create discomfort on your forearm and elbow. The wrist is a very vulnerable part in computer use. And this is attributed to awkward posture during typing. All right, and then low back, because of unsupported feet or chair not adjusted to fit. Okay, sometimes we're used to having our feet away from the floor and just hanging, and we think it's okay, and most of the time it feels okay, but actually it affects your back. All right, so these are common discomforts that arise in the use of computer, which is something many of us share in common, and we need to be aware of this, because this is a risky activity, okay, more than we realize it. All right, I talked about MSD earlier, so it's discomfort that accumulates over time. That's a key word. Okay, it accumulates over time in the muscles, ligaments, the different parts of the body, which would include strain, sprain, and even inflammation. So you can see in the diagram that it can affect just about every part of your body, upper body, and even all the way to your back and your legs. All right, so this is no joke. All right, MSD discomfort can occur anywhere in the body and typically are not caused by a single traumatic event. And listen to this, it is due to micro trauma to tissues that does not heal during rest. So the key message here is MSD is something that is cumulative. It's an injury that is cumulative. So at the beginning, you don't get to feel or even notice this. But actually, something is already happening to some particular part of your body that will result in a strain, sprain, inflammation, and something even more serious than that. Okay, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So this is what is also called a cumulative trauma disorder, and that's the big challenge of ergonomics, because people don't notice it in the beginning. By the time they start complaining about this, it's already too late. And it requires drastic action already. And I'll share an actual story that speaks to that. All right, now here's the good news. So MSDs can be controlled through ergonomics, and that's what makes ergonomics relevant and important. Even though it's not glamorous, I'll tell you, it's important. Exposure to an ergonomic risk factor increases the likelihood that you will experience discomfort. And since ergonomics is about identifying those risk factors, the exposure to those factors, and doing something about that, well, this means that it's the good news to all of this talk about MSD injuries. It's the answer. Okay? Now, what are the ergonomic applications in industry? So very obvious one would be offices, including working from home, which is the norm these days. And this would include banks, the IT and internet-based firms, call centers, business process outsourcing, services, and including government. So government is one area which is basically run by offices in many departments. So a lot of potential for applications there. Now, of course, whether the government will spend on this is another story. Another would be manufacturing. Right? We talked about that: construction, transportation, warehousing, healthcare. So these are all over the place. And as you can see from the U.S. data, these are where risk factors are very high, and that's why ergonomics has found applications in these areas. All right, let me tell you the story about how a big multinational company got started with ergonomics. And I'm not at liberty to give names, because of data privacy. These are actual, these are facts. So we'll leave it at that. So how did this company get started? Well, it began when a long-time employee required surgery on both wrists due to injuries, diagnosed at that time as carpal tunnel syndrome. Okay. Now, this is a condition that causes numbness, tingling, or weakness in your hand, attributed to continuous pressure on a nerve. It's called the median nerve, which runs the length of the arm and goes through a passage in our wrist, which is the carpal tunnel. So if you imagine, it's like a tube going through a tunnel, and that nerve goes all the way to your different fingers. All right. So the finding was that there was a serious injury, not only a discomfort, to both carpal tunnels. An ergonomic assessment, which was rather, I guess, crude at that time, because this company didn't really have a ergonomics program in place, revealed, through the interview and through, the doctor's diagnosis, that the likely cause was the employee's long years of computer use on the job. So we're talking about 20 or so years of being behind the computer and doing the work. Now, further study revealed a number of risk factors arising from the workstation and the computer use, which were present. One is poor posture due to unstable chair, or unsuitable chair, rather. Feet raised from the floor. Remember, I talked about that. Hands not supported while using the mouse and the keyboard. Eyes not aligned with the computer screen. Now, this person was vertically challenged, if I may use a term. So, the chair was typically designed for somebody who would be taller, and again, that made it unsuitable. And even the workstation was designed for somebody with longer limbs. So again, this person had to extend her arms, and her wrists were in a very awkward position, not only for 1 year, okay, throughout her career, until this this injury accumulated over time. So it was a wake-up call that came with the realization that injury was one incident too many. All right. Remember what I said earlier? It's not something that will appear at day one. This appeared 20 years after this person was doing the job. Okay. And both her wrists had to be operated on, very sadly. And it took her time to recover. And of course, there was a lot of cost involved for medical expenses, the productivity loss, and all sorts of associated costs. So this is a real story. All right. So what were actions taken at the time? Well, there was basic ergo training for the industrial engineering staff and clinic nurses. So this was a joint effort between IE and the health and safety group. And there was an immediate search in the hiring of an ergonomist who was eventually sent for training in the company headquarters, okay, for several months. And then with the help of ergonomists from the head office, a company-wide ergonomic assessment and identification and classification of risk factors was undertaken. So this took months, obviously, because it was a very thorough assessment of just about every office environment, manufacturing, warehousing, and just about every aspect of the company's operations here in the Philippines. Now, as a result of that, ergonomic awareness and improvement program across all departments was introduced and designed. So this included workstation design, workstation aids such as ergonomic keyboard and mouse, because these were already available. Ergonomic chairs, feet support. Now, just understand this, that there are about 5,000 employees in this company. So this is what I was talking about. To start an ergonomic program, and if you really want to, go for the gold here, you're going to have to spend money in the beginning. And that's what this company had to do. Now, along with this, another action taken was ergo injury reporting. The employees were told that if you feel any discomfort, any sort of pain, please go to the clinic immediately. All right, and there'll be an investigation and corrective action process in place. The last two were interesting. So the company instituted a twice-a-day ergonomic break and stretch exercises for all employees. So the deal was at certain times of the day, 10 o'clock and 3 p.m., the public address system would say, okay, it's time for ergonomic break. Let's all do our stretch. And employees had to, stand up and do the different maneuvers that were already designed, okay, for several minutes. And the only exception would be if you were in a meeting and you were speaking in the meeting. So that's the only reason why you would not do the break. But otherwise, just about everyone would do this. In the beginning, of course, it was difficult, but it eventually became a part of the regular routine. And the last one would be pop-up ergonomic reminders on laptop screens, which says, have you rested your eyes? Take a break. If you've been behind your computer for an hour or so, time to to have a micro break. So as you can see, after that wake-up call, this company had to do a lot of recovery work on a very reactive mode. Okay, which is the good news behind this. Knowing more about this, companies can make a decision early on before things get serious. So the outcomes of the story: heightened mass awareness. So people got to know, ito pala ibig sabihin ng ergonomics, because this is a strange term. There was early reporting of risk factors and injuries. So they will say, ito, yung aking uncomfortable, sila ko, dumudulas o masyadong mataas. So again, people began speaking up, and they began to be creative. In fact, some were even more creative than they should have been, because they were imagining things that were not real. But that's a good thing, people started speaking up, all right? And because of that, injuries were prevented, especially serious injuries like what this company experienced. And over time, because of the success of the program and how this company turned around their health and injury data, there was global recognition from company headquarters, from being a basket case to an example, to a role model. And this one is pretty significant. Okay. Early on, one of the nurses trained on the job in ergonomics, because if you recall, that was one of the first things they did. They trained the nurses and IEs. One of those nurses is now the Asia Region Health and Safety Manager. So this person rose from being a frontline nurse to being the head of health and safety in all of Asia for this company, and that's a huge accomplishment. Now let's talk about preparing for a career, and I'm in the backstretch now. All right, there are several things you can do. So if ergonomics interests you, first of all, study the field. Read. Also known as Google. There's a lot of information that you can go through that will be a good source of information about this field. Second is consult experts, and you're right there where you have one of the best experts. Dean Au Matias has a doctorate in human factors, and I'm sure there are others. So Prof. Eric, I'm behind here, so I can't name more names other than the late Professor Ness, whom I admired a great deal. So the message here is there are experts in the university that you can have a one-on-one with, and let them tell you about ergonomics, in real terms. What does it take to be an ergonomist or an ergonomics career? For those of you who are going for internship, look for opportunities for internship in companies with Ergo programs. So again, you can get the help of the IE department, or just even ask the companies that you're considering whether they have such a program. Another option, of course, or another means of preparation is take advanced studies, and you can do that earlier or later, depending on your time scale, the schedule that you set for yourself. And for those of you who are already poised for a job search, or when you reach that point, ask about the company's health and safety programs and what the current initiatives are in ergonomics, because that will give you an idea of what level of maturity or commitment the company is when it comes to ergonomics. And then, consistent with what Poch had said earlier, develop and hone your skills on the job to establish a track record in this area of expertise. There's nothing like practice, and continuous improvement to establish your reputation. Now, I should have answered this earlier, but I chose to do this at the end. So why ergonomics? So ergonomic injuries have both real direct costs. These are lost time from work, medical treatment, workman's compensation, productivity loss, all of these, in the US, it's billions of dollars. And there are hidden costs. And sometimes these hidden costs can actually cost more, okay? Low morale, overtime to make up for the lost days, the reporting cost, the retraining of the injured and substitute employees, and so on and so forth. So economically, there's no question that you can't afford the injuries. And again, the challenge here is you may not see the impact immediately, but it's going to come, if you don't have if an ergonomic program is not existing. But having said that, I will submit that there is a more compelling and intrinsic reason beyond the economic. It's one that comes from care and concern for the employees. And this is something that I will share with you as my own personal learning. When companies embark on any program out of care and concern, and the employees feel and realize this, human behavior studies have shown that there is a significant increase in morale and productivity. So there's data that will validate this over and over again. And again, I've experienced and learned this over the years. This is one basic ingredient to high performance. And on that note, I'd like to just share three things to wrap this up. And I hope I'm wrong, but we don't learn these in the books. And I didn't learn this in UP when I was an IE, just like you. How many years ago? 74. So that's 26, close to 50 years. Right? So the number one learning is you can't give what you don't have. So I talked about care and concern. These two come from an authentic and genuine belief that every human being is entitled to a safe and healthy work environment. Authentic and genuine belief. If that is not in your mind and in your heart, you can't give that away. So that's something for self-reflection. Are you by nature someone who believes in this and will practice and work for this? If the answer is yes, you can give this away. All right, the second principle is transformation starts from the top, or it doesn't start at all. So change, and ergonomics is not just one of them. Any change can only occur if top leaders are bought into and invested in the change. So a company without ergonomics program, just to be specific about this, if the top leader is not sold on this and is just going to give it token attention, or just think that, okay, I'll give you the money, go ahead and do what you need to do, it's not going to work. Okay. That leader must be part of this whole change process, because everyone will follow what the leader says. They will take their signal from the top. All right, so I think, again, that's very important, because we expect change in situations where leadership is not sold in it. It's just not going to happen. And then the last one is, and this will explain why I entitled the talk as Ergonomics, It's Your Choice. But each of you have the power of choice. Each of us was given that gift to choose. All right. So I ask you to rely on your passion and your aspirations, and not what others have to say or recommend for you. This is your decision. This is not your parents, your girlfriend or boyfriend, or your confidant's aspirations. This is yours, and the choice is yours. Thank you very much. And I think we're looking forward to questions.
Thank you very much, Val. And thank you for the valuable tips on ergonomics, especially these days when we're working from home and in front of our devices all day.
My pleasure.
I think it's really important that we understand and appreciate that. I was just telling Maan earlier before we started the call that, the challenge with the headsets, the cable is very short. So it keeps us stuck on our desks. So I found this extension cord, which you can buy in Lazada for 200 pesos. And it allows me to walk around even in the middle of a Zoom call. So that's ergonomics for you, right? So
exactly. Yeah.
I'd like to call back Poch to join you, Val. Let's have a quick open forum and accommodate some of the questions. Poch, first question to you, because I like when you started with, you showed the drop in GDP and then you showed that that was actually in the 80s. So gives us a sense of optimism. But we have about 100 students who are graduating from the IE course this year. And I'm sure at the back of their minds, like, if I want to go into production systems, what work opportunities are available for me moving forward in the light of this pandemic? Can you give your thoughts on that?
Yeah, certainly it is a challenging job market. There's companies who've had to scale back their expansion plans in terms of capital equipment and or additional jobs and roles. No? Um, Having said that, especially the companies that you do want to work for, those who value uh, long-term planning, long-term sustainability of their business, those companies who don't make decisions based on short-term gains, those are the companies typically that will continue their hiring of young talent.
And those are the ones that you would want to work for in the first place,
Yeah,
right?
those the types of companies you do want who will develop you because they value you for the long term. Those are the ones who are actually continue to look for talent, and so you search them out. No, certainly it does become a more competitive playing field. So the fact that you studied well in the university does give you bonus points, of course. Um, but the point is, don't lose heart. No, so it's not like jobs will fall on your lap this time in a buyer's market. Now it's a seller's market. Depends how you look at it. But now it's a employer's market, and so we're certainly looking for some good talent out there. Um, but you've been prepared well in UPIE,
Yeah,
so
I think
so it's out there.
it's a good time to show na not only am I an IE, I'm also productive. Put those two together, and that's a potent combination. Val, to you, you did mention that ergonomics is not a very mature field yet, so we've been around for about 20 years. But are there a lot of companies that have even a person or a department that focuses on ergonomics? And will there be job opportunities available in the light of this pandemic
Yeah.
in the area of human factors?
Well, from my own observation, from my own perspective, it's really the multinationals that pay attention to this, because the reason being that, in their other environments, this is almost like either part of the culture or it's a legal requirement. And these companies usually operate to what we call global standards, and therefore what they use in other countries is what they bring to the Philippines, and that makes it kind of easier to sell. All right. Um, so and that's the challenge in the Philippines, because budget is a big word in a lot of Filipino corporations. But
Yeah.
again, there are companies like San Miguel, the big ones, the big players who are aware of this, and they realize that this is not just about economics, and I said that earlier. This is also about caring for employees, and I think.
Right.
The bigger you become, the more this becomes obvious that if you don't take care of your employees, the employees won't take care of you. All right.
Well, I came from the BPO industry, and I can tell you that there
Yeah.
are several companies in the BPO sector that
Okay.
focuses on this.
Right.
Because as to your example earlier, right, the BPO workers are basically desk bound, computer bound for their 8-hour shift. So it's very, very important or critical on that one. Just a quick follow-up question on that one, Val. We have some of our students are pretty shy, so they actually send their questions to Eric, rather than to the chat box. But here's a
Correct.
question. Are there laws or legal policies that extensively cover these concerns and concepts in the Philippines related to ergonomics?
When you talk about specific ergonomics, my knowledge tells me no, it's not specific. But there are laws that will say, take care of your employees, make sure that they're not exposed to injuries on the job, and so that would cover ergonomics because that's one of the risk factors. So if you were to look at laws, there are in fact I think enough guidelines that says we need to avoid or we need to look for ways to prevent or creatively avoid this type of injury. Right? Now, again, the legal is something that people will comply with if it's the law. But to me, it takes really more than that to make ergonomics meaningful. When it comes from, again, this care for the employee,
Yeah,
and that results in much more impact than just complying with the law.
right. And unfortunately, though, as per your example earlier, sometimes it could take a major injury and a lot of expenses on the part of the company before they realize that ergonomics was the solution in the first place. Prevention
That's
rather
right.
than cure, right?
Yeah, I mean,
That's the sad part of that. It takes years before the injuries become evident, and that's why it's too late at that time.
Yeah. Watch, do you have
Yeah.
personal experience on that one?
yeah. I just wanted to add that it's really linked again to companies' compelling business needs. No, what I talked about is because there's really good companies there um, who recognize that number one valued for them is that their people are their biggest asset. The people are the biggest resource in the company. So when they talk about higher sales, higher growth, the biggest resource is their people. And there's companies out there. P&G was one of those. And taking care of your people, training them, and of course, health-wise, making sure they're okay is part of preserving that resource. P&G CEO said, "You can take away all our factories, you can take away all our P&G brands, but leave me my people, and we'll rebuild the whole business in 20 years." And so P&G was certainly had that. It was written down. It's in a handbook. People are the most vital resource, and so taking care of our people was number one, no? And certainly
And taking care of your people ties in with your equation earlier on availability, right?
It-
If your people are
yeah,
well taken care of, they will be available.
available. They'll drive. Eventually, it's all line of sight. They will drive sales and profit.
Yeah.
And so you have to line it up there. Everything that we're working on that's important: safety, sustainability, all those line
Yeah.
up, no? Because I mean that's why companies are there, right?
Watch, just to be a little academic about this, another question from a student. Based on your experience, which of the components of OEE is the most challenging to address?
um, okay. Challenging in terms of time is typically the performance, the fact that equipment have degraded and they're probably running at less than design or rated speed. Typically because those need a bigger kind of intervention, maybe additional capex might be required typically. So in terms of time, that's the one. Then difficulty in terms of root causing, those are the silent ones, no? So you have to do some really good root causing, loss identification, the availability ones, like where are you losing the hours really? Sometimes those are the invisible ones. Quality, you can see, you can identify, you can statistically display it, so performance, time and money it takes. But then on the availability side, that's the silent killer there, and
Yeah.
you have to dig deep to find those.
And well, my personal experience is that root cause analysis, my IE background, has really provided me with that foundation, such that root cause analysis became something that actually was second nature. It's something that's ingrained in the UPIE to
Yeah.
always find something better, right?
Yeah.
Val, another question for you. Should startup companies establish other areas of ergonomics early on in their setup rather
Well,
than an after the fact?
I think in the ideal world, the answer is yes. Again, it comes out of your your belief and commitment to to create a workplace that is healthy and safe, and that's part of the formula. Ergonomics is part of the formula. So the earlier you get started in it, also the better, because that that means that you learn about it early on, and I would guess that the cost will not be as high as it would be if you do it later, because by that time it's too late.
Right. Val,
Yeah.
are there case studies, published case studies that we can all refer to so that when we have these conversations on ergonomics with companies that are not as enlightened, we could actually show them? I'm sure there are, right?
I th- I think so. I think that those are the only difficult part here would be the injury data, in the sense that these are considered private by many companies. So
Right.
they're not always for public consumption. So that would be the challenge. But at least if it's about sharing how they came up with their program, and what sort of things were prioritized in the beginning, because there's so many ways to start the program.
Yeah.
I think that information can be drawn from many studies.
Touch from your experience.
Yeah, I was just going to add that again, companies, they always tie it into the business goals, right? When you have a good program, for example, you have a good safety program, you have a good occupational health program, companies typically get better insurance rate premiums
Yeah.
for their people. They do, and it's big savings, no? And companies recognize that, especially when you're talking U.S. based multinational companies where cost of insurance is a significant part of people cost. And so again, tying it in there, companies recognize that they can get better deals on something like insurance and
Mhm.
save a lot of cost just by making sure they have good programs that take care of their people.
Right.
Mm.
Now, question to both of you. I mean, we're all in a work from home environment now for what, 18 months now, right? The question is, like, for example, if you look at the BPO industry, at the start of the ECQ, as much as 90% of the BPO workers, that's about close to 1 million people, were working from home. Now it's about 50%. Okay. A lot of them have gone back on site. But the question goes back to the work from home environment may not necessarily be ideal, right? Especially from an ergonomics perspective, to your point, Val, earlier about the height of the monitor, the chair, etc., right?
Yeah.
Who should be taking the lead in taking care of the employees in this regard? You mentioned earlier that it's better to have a top down, but can the companies afford actually to look at each employee? What is your setup at home, and how can we supplement you on that one?
Yeah, to me, there's no question that it's the company's obligation or the company's duty to do that, because the work environment at home must be close to the work environment in the office. Why should it be any different? So if there's a need to just even transfer the chair that used to be used in the office to the home, let's do it. And by
Right?
the way,
Because this
that
ergonomic
happened to
chairs
my
are not
son.
cheap, right?
They're not cheap. There's
Yeah.
you're talking about 7,000, 8,000. But I was going to share that my son was asked to bring his equipment in the office to our home, and
Right.
set up his desk in a way that almost looked like the way it was. So to me, it's a no question. it's a company's obligation to replicate what they consider the standard in the office at the home.
Right. Watch,
And
how about you, RC?
Yeah.
Of course, the manufacturer in the production side, you can't bring home, right? But for the rest of your organization, how are you handling it?
The yeah, I guess the most the I guess the most immediate response at the pandemic was the tools of trade, right? To be able to sample a computer, pay for the Wi-Fi connection that's needed, and the yeah the chair that you eventually choose to use, or the table that you eventually choose to use. I guess it varies. It really varied. There was no direction that you have to use the company chair. No,
Right.
I I was seated on a couch actually for the first 3 months, on a couch, and then I was using a picnic table for a yung the portable picnic table was my desk, no, for the
And then you
first four
started
months.
developing back
And
pains.
oh yeah, I had a really bad rhomboid issue, and so part of it was that, no. So now I'm in one of those ergonomic chairs, bought cheaply at HMR, and
Right. No, I mean, I agree. In the last year, since I hardly go out of the house, most of my Lazada purchases have been related to equipment related to what I'm doing at work. Even a wrist rest, as simple as a wrist rest, is very, very important. A proper mouse, laptop stand so that the monitor is higher. My next planned investment is a bigger monitor so that I don't have to squint. So I think those are the proper investments to make.
And
We're
Joe
running
Marie,
out of.
Joe
Sorry,
Marie,
go
just
ahead,
wanted
Val.
to add
Yeah.
just very quickly that it's a risk-based decision as well. It depends on what sort of risk factors are present. Working from home, and give focus on the highest risk factors, depending on the nature of the job. So
Yeah.
some may need a different level of ergonomic support compared to others, depending on the nature of their job.
But Val, I think it's important to remind our audience that that has nothing to do with your age. I'm sorry, but I'm talking to my nephew, for example, and I see how he's working, and we talked about that. And he was saying, Tito, I'm still so young. I'm not as old as you, so don't worry about that. But I don't think so. As you said earlier, it doesn't happen overnight. It progresses through time.
Exactly.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, we're running out of time. I'm sorry, but last question for both of you, because you did mention this in your presentations, but let's just recap. What specific steps can a student, especially a graduating student, that's interested in human factors or in production systems, what specific steps can they take? And as a quick follow-up question to that one, are you familiar with companies where students can intern in those specific areas? Let's start with Poch.
Yeah, I mean, companies like URC, P&G, and these big companies with manufacturing footprints in the Philippines certainly continue to look for young talent, and again, it becomes more competitive, no, just because there's less demand out there, but it is there, and those companies do continue. So you have to keep trying, no, and don't lose heart. It is a tough environment, but it's doable. No, it's something you can overcome, and it's also important just to know what your passion is. You don't really have to force fit yourself into a URC or a P&G, or in my batch, probably, I don't know, less than 20% went down the path I took. No,
Mhm.
so there's certainly different paths there, um, and again, no, I paint a positive outlook. I really believe in it, but again, don't be in a rush to figure out what's going to happen to you. Let it happen. Know that
Exactly.
you've prepared well. Don't be so worried to get to the end point of where you're going. No.
Yep.
Uh,
Don't expect to be promoted in 6 months.
yeah, or don't even expect to be at your dream job as your first job. Yung
Right.
ganun, no? Or because you don't really know if that actually is your dream job. No? I think Calvin and Hobbes said something like that. Like you don't know where you're going until you're there.
Yes,
No? Something
exactly.
like that. Yeah.
Correct. How about you, Val? Especially in the
Um,
area of human factors.
so in the second to the last slide, I think I basically gave some suggestions on that to answer that. But if there's one thing that I would have done more in my time, because I didn't do all of this, by the way. So I'm sharing a lot of this on hindsight. But if there's one thing, I would have talked to someone who could mentor me or coach me on this particular interest. So again, it starts from your passion. Is this something you really want to do and it interests you? I would get somebody who's involved there to be my kind of coach or sounding board to talk to me and have a real conversation on what does it take, what are the ups and downs, no, of this career, and what are the big challenges, so that I can make a more rational decision on my work. But having said that, I think the caveat here is yes, it would be good to start with a company that already has an Ergo program, and I can refer names to Prof. Eric. No, I can leave that with Prof. Eric. That's one. It's always good to have, if program is already existing, because then you just kind of slide into it. But there's also wisdom to starting from scratch. It's more difficult. It's an uphill battle, but if you succeed, because this is your passion, if you succeed in creating an Ergo program for a company that has none,
The
because
satisfaction.
boy, yeah, that's a huge achievement. And to me, that's probably something that we should all look for. If you create something that is not
Right.
existing, right? So it's I'm not saying that always try to look for somebody with an Ergo program. It helps in the beginning, but if there's none, and you want to do this, and you are fueled by your passion, hey, go for it. This is what
Right.
success is all about. Creating.
And talking about your achievements, thank you very much. I mean, we have two fantastic achievers as our speakers this morning. At this point, I'd like to bring the floor back to Dr. Eric to give the department's thanks to our two speakers for this morning. Go ahead, Eric.
Okay, on behalf of the IE department, of course, we are grateful to our to distinguished alumni for again sharing us your experience, showing our students the landscape as far as the two tracks are concerned: human factors and production systems. I appreciated the question of one of our students about OEE. That only shows that they're listening to what we're teaching them. Okay, and of course, I like that you shared how one company started its program on human factors. So, Sir Jason, can you please share our digital certificates? Okay. Thank you. So the Department of Industrial Engineering and Operations Research awards the Certificate of Appreciation to Poch Amir for imparting valuable knowledge about his experience in the production systems track of the industrial engineering discipline through his talk titled Manufacturing Challenges and the Relevance of the IE Discipline, given this Saturday, May 22, 2021 via Zoom, signed by yours truly as the chair of the department. Maraming salamat, Sir Poch.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And likewise, the Department of Industrial Engineering and Operations Research awards this Certificate of Appreciation to Val Reyes for imparting valuable knowledge about his experience in the human factors and ergonomics track of the industrial engineering discipline through his talk titled Ergonomics, Your Choice, given this Saturday, May 22, 2021 via Zoom, signed by, again, yours truly as the chair of the department. Maraming salamat, Sir Val.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And again, thank you once again to our speakers. So to close our event, please welcome the president of the UPIE Alumni Association, Mr. Ricky Peña. Ricky?
Very much, John, and congratulations for, as usual, hosting this successfully. Covadis, no, that's the term I heard from Professor Eric earlier. No? So Covadis is so appropriate, no, to the theme of this webinar series. No? And of course, today we are on our second installment, no, on keeping track and finding direction. And I am so happy to be a part, no, of this morning's exercise where we got to listen to two of our most distinguished alumni. I'd like to thank Poch, who's a batchmate, batch 87, for tackling the manufacturing challenges, no, and what is the relevance of IE, no, and he said about the relevance, no, it's a question of relevance, no, how do we position ourselves, no, in any business situation, and really for an IE there are so many tracks, no, for us to position ourselves, no, where there are compelling business needs, no, whether it's on the revenue side or on the cost side. Poch also tackled about, you know, learning the moving parts and becoming an expert in whatever you do, no, and very practical tips, no, for IEs and those who are about to embark on their career. Whether it's you know, you're in manufacturing or you're dealing with people, or even the task of monitoring utilities, so how that's working. So you know, in every big or small task, no, there is an IE task, or there's an IE discipline, no, that can be realized. No? And then, of course, to Mr. Val Reyes, thank you so much for talking about ergonomics. No, it's your choice. No, and then you added there's a question. It's all about the question of fit. No, what ergonomics is all about. No, but more than just human factor engineering. No, ergonomics really speaks volumes about health and safety. No, which is very relevant at these times. No, I personally find that this is an intriguing field, especially, no, in this day of the pandemic, no, when we are searching for ways how to work better, no, in a changed environment, and certainly ergonomics, no, will definitely have, no, a long tail ahead of it, no, as we try to establish, no, a new work order, not only for those in the offices, no, but also for students, no, because we don't really know how well our students are learning, no, in these times, no, given distance learning. So I believe that even in that area, there's a lot that ergonomics, no, can play in creating the ideal workspace. So I'd like to thank Eric for inviting the UPIEAA to collaborate, no, in this very noble initiative. No? We are only too happy to help. And of course, to the students who attended, it is my fervent hope that you were able to learn how you can truly apply IE, no? And especially come the time when you decide what you want to do, no? You can hark back to these talks, no, and find inspiration. So with that, I wish you a good day. Magandang tanghali po sa inyong lahat. Mabuhay tayo sa UP Industrial Engineering.
Thank you very much, Ricky. We have come to the end of the second edition of Keeping Track, Finding Direction. I hope you have learned a lot from our speakers today and are inspired to become successful IEs in the future. Thank you for participating in today's event. Again, I am John Marie Mercado with Maan de Rosario and Jason Fernandez. It has been our pleasure being your hosts for today. Have a pleasant day and please stay safe. Bye-bye.